Got it going.
Dots.
Now we are good.
Okay, here you be. We are called to order. Mr. Cornick had written us to say that she won't make it, but we have a quorum otherwise, so let's do a quick roll call. Hanning.
Here?
Platt. Here. Cornick is absent. Ben David.
Yeah.
Thankfully here, 4 out of 5 gets us where we need to go. Okay, first item is the agenda, which seems kind of short, but I'm sure we can find plenty to talk about. Were there thoughts on the agenda? Content or order?
Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering about adding a discussion about the USAC meeting.
Oh,
I don't know if that goes on current planning projects or other items.
You could do it under, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Oh, go ahead.
We could do it under like commissioners' comments, or staff updates, one of those. Just add it there.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Is it something that requires a decision or anything from us, or you just want to let us know what happened?
I don't think we have to make a decision about anything, but I have some thoughts to throw out.
Okay, we will put you down there, and you guys remind me when we get to that point under staff updates and commissioner comments. And thank you for doing that. Other thoughts? Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second,
I know.
I'll second.
seconded, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes. There's always something. What, let's just go around the table. Anybody want to have offer a thought on the minutes that Mr. Holmes sent out to us? I don't have anything.
I didn't find anything.
I had one that was just a typo. I'm on line 233. Where it says, are you with me, guys?
I'm here.
Okay, okay.
All right. 233, I got that.
333, yeah, it says we're gonna hold those small lots to a higher drinking standard, like, I don't know, they have to drink beers and whiskey or something. I think we meant treatment standard. Oh, I think you just heard it wrong. I'm not sure what a drinking standard is. Otherwise, and I assume you made it through our the matrix of all the different signs. There was, pardon me?
You need to approve the minutes?
This is a comment on the minutes,
Oh,
if that's okay. We're not changing that. I was just, when I read through the minutes, I had thought that we had approved the density standards on all of the pieces, but I didn't see that reflected.
I went by what David had circled on his sheet, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
If something's wrong, point it out.
Well, yeah, let's, we're just gonna plug people's memory. It was a small matter, but and Mr. Platt was taking us through quite quickly, efficiently.
Exactly, efficiently.
Very nicely, well done job. Let's see. And I thought in all cases where there was a per parcel, we had adopted it.
That is my recollection also, or
Okay,
slash intent.
okay, so do you have your sheet?
Right back at the office.
Yeah, I don't have the
Okay.
one that I wrote down things on.
I like the.
Now, did you make mixed? Did you have a sheet with the sign changes? The sign regulation changes, that's what they're trying to like. I'm not sure what, they'd have to repeat what they're.
I mean, for example, in the minutes, it says on premise signs, agricultural zoning. One sign per parcel. I thought we had done all those as per 35 acres or per minimum lot size.
We did them per minimum lot size.
Okay, which I guess in the case of agriculture was 35 acres. With the residential, we wrote per minimum
I
lot
can fix
size
that.
because we have 3 different minimum lot sizes.
It was per minimum lot size for all of them, except commercial, which doesn't have minimum lot size.
Right, I guess that's true of ag as well. It doesn't need to be said about ag because there's only one lot size for ag, one minimum lot size instead of, and it's 35, whereas there's 3 different minimum lot sizes for residential. But the way you said it was correct. All right, so if that was our intent, could you have the minutes and what goes forward reflect that?
Oh, this is in the minutes.
Well, that's where I'm picking it up, is in the minutes.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
what?
because it was changed in what we went through. So like the document, it should have all of the changes that you made.
Okay, and I didn't look at the document, I just read the minutes, and it keyed to me that we had addressed that issue of density and all, and had gone with the 4th column with the colored sheet. So
Yes.
I guess my point about minutes is also a point about the motion. As that moves forward, let's make sure that we have the correct language moving forward. Is that fair?
I guess I'm confused. I don't see where it doesn't say per minimum lot size.
Oh, well, the one that caught my eye was on K, I think, line 195.
Okay. I can fix that.
Okay, and there may have been others that just, I say, keyed in my mind that I thought we had agreed on all those the density requirements, the per acreage as they were on the column.
Sure.
Yeah, and I'm looking at what's on the website that's been published. And it does do that. 2 permanent signs per 35 acres for commercial or agricultural. And then the rural says a maximum of 1 permanent sign per allowable minimum lot size for residential zoning districts.
Okay, then maybe it's just the minutes that
Correct.
aren't exactly right. All right, then I just offer that as a possible correction. Okay, other
I
thoughts?
went through this probably faster than Michael did.
Are you sure? We had beaten it around long enough, and with Mr. Ayers urging us forward, we dispatched it.
It's been in a good mood ever since then.
It came in good order. Might have got to reach expectations. All right, other thoughts on minutes? Hearing none, I'll accept the motion to approve as amended.
I move to approve minutes as amended.
I second.
Further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, done deal. Disclosures, anything you've been doing that you want to share with us, or conflicts of interest, Ms. Henning?
Nothing to disclose.
Mr. Platt? Mr. David?
Nothing.
Lee agrees. Well, I would point out that there have been continuing discussions on the small wastewater regs between Mr. Gertsch and Ms. Erickson and myself. So that'll come up as necessary in our discussions. If somebody cares, there has been some homework done outside of these meetings. Okay, public applications, we have none. So that gets us to the APOZ regs. Now, where I thought we left those, we had just been working through them, kind of page by page, line by line, and then we stalled out at one point. That point was at the end of the table of prohibited uses, according to my placekeeping. So my thought was we would pick that up where we left off and ideally bring it on through to the end. How's that sound?
Sound good.
Okay.
Item number 12.
Pardon me?
Are you talking about item number 12?
So, yeah, I think we had finished the table or I was thinking we were down, towards the end. Item 12 would be fine. If you got something on item 12, let's just go along. But if there's small amendments, kind of typos that we all just agree with, let's just keep track of those. If there's something that's more substantive that we have some disagreement on, we can cause take a formal vote. That's acceptable. This is just
Chair,
that.
do you mind if we go back into the table of prohibited?
It's all available for comment. We can start, Garth, to start.
Are we working off of the red line or the clean?
I'm looking at the red line.
I'm looking.
The clean? Well, then we'll have to do some cross-referencing. I just gotta, where you get started, I don't know what the right answer is.
I'm looking at number 8, which I think would be numbered 8 in the clean version of the table, where it talks about underground injection control wells.
That's up towards the beginning somewhere. Can I see
It's
that?
old 29, new number 1.
It's on page 10 of the red line version.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Hattie.
I previously had not taken the time to look up all the subclasses of UICs. And now, after looking at them, but in a document that was really kind of a mess, it was hard to line up the definition with the 5B2, 5B3. I didn't like something just, I see, you're sharing, that's why it just went up.
Where are we at?
Page.
Page 12.
Page
Yeah, it's at the bottom of the table of prohibited uses. Very close to the bottom.
there you go.
Yeah, maybe 5 up from the bottom.
So my concern is that class 5 E3 and class 5, I guess it's 5E3, 5E4. I had a hard time figuring out what 5E5 was. But they basically allow the discharge of untreated wastewater from a larger capacity system, which I don't think is protective of the aquifer. So it seems like if we're getting rid of all of these other classes of UIC wells, like class 1, class 2, class 3, and 4, that we should maybe take a scalpel to some of the class 5 ones. We already did in terms of getting rid of, like, for example, agricultural drainage systems. But I think we should take a look at these 5E3, 4, and 5 categories to see if we also want to take an axe to them.
And I certainly don't know my 5Bs from my 4Bs, but have you looked through these, Mr. Ayers? Do you have a thought on this?
No, I was hoping we could get some expertise from the,
If I can find a better document than the one I was
Hydrogeologist.
looking at, I'd be happy to look at it again. Just that whatever I finally found that listed how Wyoming defines them was a messed up document where
was it in the regs or
it
in?
was like case. I couldn't even figure out where it was from. So I need to dig deeper. Might be chapter 27 of the W2.
There is a chapter.
It says it's chapter 16 in here.
There is a chapter that has all these in. I didn't go back and look at it.
Yeah.
I'll dig in deeper on those.
Okay.
And then is the best way to,
Go to the Secretary of State's website,
Yeah.
do the administrative rule system, and you got to scroll down to DEQ and find their things. I can send you a link if that's helpful.
I can do that.
Okay.
I go in there.
The formatting is often kind of miserable, so it can kind of help if you download it and then
Maybe
open
that
it
was
as a
my
PDF.
mistake. Maybe that was the problem with things being like not separated and easy to figure out. So if I do that research, should I just send something just straight to you and for you and David, or just wait till the next meeting? I just thought you wanted to forward on this stuff.
Yeah. I don't know if, even if we went as fast as we could on this, I don't know if it would make a difference for the Supreme Court case. So, and it might as well be done well at this point.
Well, let's keep that one in mind. If we end up today with that's the only thing left, maybe we can bring up chapter 16 and find our way through it. I guess the urgency to get this done isn't huge, except just let's get it done and move on. So if we're really close, Chair. Yes, sir.
Just a question. So are these just large, is it domestic sewage, these, you think?
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
It's not like commercial additives or anything, they're just domestic.
to get into the UIC program that's just a threshold, 20,000 gallons a day or something.
More than 2,000.
2,000.
Our threshold, yeah.
And that bumps you over, even if it's just a conventional septic system, that's over that volume per day, that it kicks you into the UIC program. And the UIC program covers everything from big septics to 6,000 foot injection toxic waste wells. So that's why you've got the million different classes.
Does it cover like oil and gas reclamation injection?
Yeah, whole works. Yeah. In fact, maybe that oil flood recovery is the UIC regulated event.
And so, and actually we should probably change that to like land uses utilizing. Wow. Because like the UIC itself isn't the land use.
Yeah,
You know,
are the wells a land use?
That structure, that is,
not that we regulate.
we would call it a
Structures are like wells are all state engineer. Anything that we did with wells would be conflicting with or duplicating state engineers' regs.
Well, there's lots of kinds of wells.
Right. Oh, so okay, water wells. Yes, but I'm saying that it should say like commercial, just like we have up top, number one, commercial land uses involving underground injection wells.
because the land use could still be residential. But,
Yeah.
but, I mean, do you consider a less than 2,000 gallon per day small wastewater facility to be a structure that you can limit and restrict?
Not under zoning.
And Mr. Chair, I guess my question is so anything that's over the 2,000 gallons or in this category, that's not an application that comes to my office. That goes straight to the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality.
Yeah.
So will they honor this and they not allow these if, because we can't stop them. I mean, I don't think there's anything we can do to enforce a well or not a well, but a system that is
It would be
regulated by Department of Environmental Quality.
It would be two different things. I mean, because then at the zoning certificate stage, that's where they don't get a zoning certificate, even if they do have that permitting.
Well, if they get a zoning certificate for the building and then we give that to them and then they go do that.
Well, then, so for APOZ stuff, you're gonna have to inquire, I guess, like what.
I mean, I don't even know what triggers these types of systems. I don't know what that is. But so if they were doing this and they were permitted to do this, they put in a system, we would be able to.
I mean,
say,
you just
can't put
gotta-
a building in.
You gotta ask them,
I don't
like,
know that.
does your,
Strange.
well, the zoning certificate should also just be for the use of land as a whole.
It's usually associated with the building or structure.
Right, but statute says no person shall.
Right, but that's not what our regulations say.
Okay, and we went, at the beginning of this, we changed the title of this whole table slightly, right? To conform with our zoning authority. Remind me what we did there. It's no longer called the prohibited uses, it's called table of activities, it's called table of prohibited land uses.
Yeah,
What Mr. Ayers pointed out to us, the land use would be land uses involving UIC wells.
yeah.
Then we're not regulating the wells, we're regulating land uses. That's the off that hook. And that's
Mr. Chair, maybe
yes, please.
I'm just trying to figure out how we apply and enforce our rules, when it comes to these.
So is your structure doing any of these things? Like, is it utilizing is it going to be used as a commercial land use involving a UIC? Because, I mean,
To get a zoning certificate, they don't have to prove that to us.
Will they now? Under this new table?
Possibly. I mean, I guess I haven't thought about this, so
So-
I'm just trying to understand it.
I mean, I think it's,
And I'm fine, we talk about this later too, because I just want it to be something where somebody comes in for a permit and whoever my staff is that gets that permit knows to look for something, or there's some way to like make sure these things are being done, you know? Honestly, there's not gonna be a lot of commercial uses up there, but I didn't know if this could apply to,
Right, but let's
I don't know, I would.
Well, so
residential.
let's look, for example, at number 7, commercial accumulation and the recycling. We have a land use there it's not a building necessarily, it's piling up a big pile of junk. It
yes,
says you can't do that on the aquifer now.
Right.
Okay, so how,
same
I'm
as,
concerned that we would have no way to address that.
So what I'm saying is, the way it is now, and if these are changed to some way that we need to look at this stuff, we receive a zoning certificate for a building. Somebody comes in for a building. We've never received an application for a wastewater system ever, because that's regulated under the wastewater regulations. But they would come in and they would say, okay, here's where the building's gonna go. And this is what's on the property. We look for that specific use of that specific building. And we say, okay, this building has to be set back 20 feet from the property lines. We make sure that is the way it is. We make sure that it's going to be used. I mean, if they say it's going to be used for an outbuilding, we are requiring, some basic building plans that just shows that that's what it's going to be used for. Here's the doors. There's no, anything in bedrooms in there. So we would say, okay, this looks good. Sign off on it, and they go away or whatever. Now they decide, well, actually the effluent that's going to come from this is going to be over 2,000 gallons per day. Now we have to go to the state's program and get their permit. We don't know that. If it's over 2,000 gallons, they would go to the DEQ, they would get a permit, and we would never see it.
But are you suggesting that the only place this whole table of prohibited land uses has any meaning is through the doorway of a zoning certificate?
Not necessarily. I mean, if it was made known to us that somebody was putting in one of these systems, then yeah, we could say, we would start our enforcement, like, you can't do this, But it's just, I don't want to get to the point where we're having to, hey, I see that there's a nuisance on this property, we have to enforce it. I mean, I want it to be like, they come in and tell us what they're doing, and then, and maybe it's just a matter of our application, what type of wastewater system. Like I said, I'm just trying to figure out, thinking through my, in my head, how are we gonna enforce this to make this worth having in here,
No, but are you addressing specifically the UIC? Because it sounds to me like you're identifying an issue with the entire table.
No, I was speaking specifically to the underground injection control system. I haven't really thought about it in the lieu of all these other things.
and that statute says that in order to use land, you have to have a zoning certificate saying that use is land, which is
Correct.
probably a conversation to have elsewhere, but.
Well, and yeah, but that's not what our regulations say. And we can't apply them unless it's in our regulations, correct?
All right, well, I guess what I'm taking from this, you guys feel free to weigh in, is that we identified a more wide-ranging issue, because the guts of the whole ADOZ regulation, the table of prohibited uses is one of those. The other has been lot size subdivisions. Those are what fundamentally protect the aquifer. So if there's issues with how the table of prohibited uses can be implemented and enforced, we need to address those, seems to me.
Right, and so.
And that's true of the whole table. So it sounds to me like some of the things you're asking about have application beyond just that one item.
Sure, and maybe they do. So, I mean, the way we would do this is like, okay, somebody comes in, it's like, hey, we want to do this business or something on this property. And and then at that point, like we start asking questions, okay, what is gonna be involved with this business? Oh, you're gonna do landscaping?
I mean, it
So does
says-
that mean you have fertilizer on the property? Does it mean you have this? Does it mean you have? And then we can look and say, okay, we can apply that at that time. Like I actually did this within the last few weeks. Somebody came in and was asking about reclamation type business or whatever. And I was like, okay, what's on the property? What are you gonna have on the property? You're gonna store this, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. And then I looked through what we have on our land use table and I said, well, okay, here's the problem. You can't do this on the aquifer because it is prohibited.
David, it
And so then
says
they go the other way.
right here, chapter 5, section 2 of the zoning resolution, new uses existing or expansions of existing uses, conditional uses or changes of use within a designated zoning district are required to get a zoning certificate pursuant to 18.5.203, and then it quotes that. So,
Right, but how do you apply that? Do you go door to door and say, are you planning on doing something here? I mean,
Well,
like, I don't understand.
in
how-
your-
Excuse me, but at some point, if you have a prohibition on something, it exists as a prohibition.
Well,
And you
yeah.
don't have to have somebody come and ask you if it's okay.
Well, we have to know if it's there.
Right, but if I'm looking at the
I mean,
entire
we need to
table-
know to talk to them before they do that, correct?
That would be correct, but as I'm looking at, I'm just scanning the table of prohibited uses, there's quite a number of them that don't necessarily involve a structure where they would come to you and say, is it okay? They're still not okay. Go ahead.
It's like
Absolutely.
item number 9, the animal feedlots, you don't need to have any structure, you need to have a fence. Right?
Right. I mean, I guess you just have to rely on people too, that they will, before they do something, they hopefully come and ask you about it, but that's about 50-50, I think. So,
I'm sure there'll always some things will be discovered, and identified as either being okay or not okay. And that's probably just the way it is.
right, and honestly, I'm more, my comments were specifically to that item because it's not regulated by us. I just didn't know how we regulate it if it's not regulated by us, but Matt's trying to explain that, so.
I mean, it says right there, right, uses require zoning certificate. Which, I know.
I guess it's how a lot of these could be, like, I could go to the Department of Ag and get a permit for concentrated animal feed operation and think I'm good to go, and I'm not gonna build a building and talk to you.
Right.
But then if I show up with that many cows, you're gonna find out probably from the neighbor network, and then you're gonna shut me down. And WDEQ probably doesn't CC the county on permits they issue, right?
Right.
Would they, if we asked her, would that be beyond their ability to communicate?
They may talk to us, like, I don't know. I mean, I think they would be a little more sympathetic to our, aquifer protection area. And I mean, I feel like DEQ would work with us, I just don't know. Yeah, they wouldn't have to, I guess.
Right, well, I mean, they just permitted a class 5 UIC in Teton County for the glamping operation. I assume all those little glamping tent platform things probably had to go through their planning and zoning. but
No,
The county couldn't, they didn't?
that's the whole fight, is that the county and at least the district court preliminarily ruled that the county cannot, implement their zoning on a state land.
State
Because it's
process.
state. Because it's state.
But Mr. David, do you have something to add to that, Mr. Platt?
I was just wondering if our application for a certificate is online. It's online, right?
The application.
Can we add to it a checkbox where you say, I apply to DEQ, or if there is any, if you have to apply to another entity in the state?
Probably.
That will make it, at least you'll know they're planning something that is not in our certificate and they apply to someone else. Let's say game and fish for an elk farm. Yeah. I'm just thinking crazy.
I mean, and honestly, I've never seen one of these systems that are right here go in, so.
Well, it's unlikely, all right, what it sounds to me like what we have here is perhaps we take it back to staff. You tell us if there's some way we can improve the draft regulation to make it more enforceable or easily put together. Sounds like there's some controversy here. I think we're agreed we want to maintain the integrity of the table of prohibited uses. So if you guys tell us that we need to change some wording or add some language someplace to make it clear, then we should do that.
Sure.
Okay.
Right, and I'm fine with that. Like I said, I'm
And
just
start at
trying
the
to
top of the table and go all the way
understand
through
how
it.
it's going to- Yeah, we just want to make sure it's enforceable. I mean, yeah, unfortunately, some of these ideas are wonderful ideas, but when they, comes to our office, it's a lot more difficult to enforce them, And you can't think of everything, that's just not gonna happen. But
And
just do our best.
if we have to reach beyond them having to affirmatively come to you for a permit, that's okay. I think that's what we're trying to do here. There are certain things that are prohibited because they're prohibited. Right, all right, so look at the table of prohibited land uses over, top to bottom, and come back to us with the corrections, and then we'll take that opportunity to sort out all of those bazillion UICs. Does that sound reasonable? Okay, next item. Anybody? Something
If
else?
we're going
Yes.
out of the land use table.
Yes. Are we still at land use table? Let's finish it off.
I'm done with the land
Anybody?
use table.
Sorry. Well, with it, Mr. Ayers, what do you got?
So minimum lot size. My initial proposal would be to change that to dwelling density. And it would be minimum lot size within the APOZ shall be 35 acres with one dwelling per parcel if the dwelling is served by a small wastewater facility. So my idea was to tie this specifically to those dwellings that are served by a small wastewater facility. If it's on a centralized system, then, it seems that would be permissible, because the real concern is the septic effluent. And that should probably be changed to match more of the sort of zoning standards in chapter 3, where density 1 dwelling unit per 35 acres if served by a small wastewater facility. That was just a thought.
Okay, let's follow that thought for a moment. I had just wanted to clarify one dwelling per lot, just to make it clear
Yeah.
that we just meant per lot. But to the substance of your point, I don't think I agree. What a 35 acre minimum lot size does is it reduces the whole works, the septics, the pesticides, the herbicides, the
Okay.
managed turf. So I guess I feel like minimum lot size is human footprint in all of its manifestations,
Okay.
not just septic. Others?
I agree with the chair. When I think about the part of the aquifer protection area that's in city limits and some of the concerns about impacts there, like parking lots with stormwater runoff. I mean, I think the chance for harm goes up with, even though I see what you're saying about your centralizing the treatment of the wastewater, just the additional human activity and chances for other things to happen, I think we want to avoid.
So, to my understanding, the basis for the 35 acres was based off of the modeling by, was it Wink?
Wink, I think.
Yeah, and that was the full septic build out. So that was directly tied only to dwellings with septics. So if we're gonna justify that, we may need some additional citation. And another thought is, okay, it's just dwellings. That doesn't speak to any other kind of structure. So if it's a business, it's not dwelling. Well, they could have 5 business structures, possibly. I don't know that.
Yeah,
like the base zoning.
What does minimum lot size mean?
No density. So yeah, then they could have an unlimited amount of commercial structures on a parcel under commercial zoning, because if it's silent, it goes back to its base zoning for.
Are we still approving commercial, industrial activities on the aquifer?
Essentially, yeah, if it, so long as it's not a prohibited use. And its base zoning allows it, yeah, we would.
So it gets down to, I see what you're saying, it gets back to, sure, you could have 5 buildings, but they can't all have their own small wastewater facilities to each one.
Well, or I guess what it says now is you could have however many like non-dwelling structures on there as you want.
As long as they,
As
the particular uses, there's that later.
and it abides by the base, whatever the base zoning district is.
So do we want to change the word dwelling to the word structure?
Well, that's, I mean, is a, you got a primary structure as a dwelling, and then you got like a secondary kind of shop. Is that as noxious? Or what if you just had a really big garage that was the size of a shop, but it was part of the same structure?
I'm just asking.
No, yeah,
Okay, well, there's different ways we could make that, we could modify that sentence. One would be just to eliminate everything beyond the minimum lot size within the APOC shall be 35 acres. I mean, that's a substantive and enforceable standard.
certainly.
And then, once you've got your 35 acres, you are subject to your uses, you're subject to zoning certificates. I'm not sure that I would be uncomfortable with that. It doesn't go as far as one could, but we don't need to sharpen everything to a razor edge. My colleagues think of going short rather than long on this one, as it not then trying to get into.
And so you say take out the second sentence as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where,
Just make it one sentence.
just minimum lot size.
That's fine.
So I can't think of the downside to it right now.
All right, since we're not gonna have our official public hearing come out of this, it sounds like because the previous one, let's just leave that in the instructions to staff, come back to us with the next draft.
Just one more.
Delete that, go
One
ahead.
more potential option is to call it a principal building slash structure, right? Because the building in which is conducted the main or principal use of the property upon which the building is located. These buildings may be agricultural, residential, commercial, or industrial buildings. So if you called it that,
Like one principal structure.
a principal
Yeah.
building slash structure from our definitions of the zoning resolution, then it seems like it would cover all the land use options.
I disagree with you more. I'm just gonna say though, there is only gonna be one principal structure.
Right.
Always.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really change anything.
Right.
Again, I'm not disagreeing with you guys on it.
Because then you could have.
Okay, so simplifying it and just getting rid of the number of dwellings or whatever.
Secondary structures under commercial. How many secondary structures can you get?
Okay, we're happy to proceed with that option. Sounds like we got another crack at this, we do need to bring it to a resolution at some point.
I'm fine.
Okay, Ms. Angela?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, the next item.
Just keep it with just lot size.
What's anybody got?
I have filled out some
Notes?
So Burr sent me some of his comments. So I was going off of them. But under, I guess, what is this? So page 12, starting on line 240, whatever that subdivision is, A. Bloom's recommendation would be to change this documentation must be provided by a professional engineer, geologist licensed in Wyoming, and shall include instead of should. Number 1 was okay. Number 2 would be evidence that no significant threat to groundwater will occur due to the lessening of the setback rather than due to the installation of the proposed wastewater system. So I guess now we're kind of getting into how do we parse out the wastewater system stuff and put that in the wastewater regs, but still leave regulation in. And then number 3 would also have that same thing, where installation of an advanced wastewater system is defined by DEQ, which Vern correctly pointed out, they don't even use the term advanced wastewater system. So it could be just if recommended mitigation methods needed to protect the groundwater. An additional location and setback constraints may be established as determined by the results of site-specific investigation. I would take out that in Chapter 3, Section 3D9. It's easy enough, or it would not be ambiguous to figure out what the SSI is because there's only one of them in the zoning resolution. And then take out that was one APOZ development capitalized, which I didn't catch. So just before the proposed development.
Okay, now listen, so where are you in the?
Under subsection 3, or like sub level 3.
Line 251.
Yeah, line 252.
In the red line. Yeah. All right. And so this, I'm trying catching up here with my notes. So on line 243, we decided we would just delete the reference to wastewater systems. Is that right?
Yeah, and evidence that ensures, I would just say evidence that no significant threats of strike ensures will occur due to the lessening of the setback, because this is what this subparagraph is about, is a setback from, lessening of the setback.
All right, yes, I agree with that. And then it refers down there to Chapter 3, Section 3D9. That should be 7.
I would just strike
We'll just get rid of it.
in, I would just strike into 9. Because it's just determined as the results of the SSI. Although I don't fully understand. I sort of remember language that there was like mitigation suggestions in the SSI, but I don't see that anymore. Nor do I see where it was. So I don't know. We need to make sure that there still are additional location and setback constraints that are established through the SSI. Seems to me that the SSI really just now identifies the vulnerable features, which then it would still just be the operable 100 feet setback of anything from a vulnerable feature.
So we need to go back and let's go clear back to the cap to address that point. Because we're offering the SSIs would be the vehicle for suggesting mitigation.
Yeah, well, and that I had that in my mind as well.
361 is where it was.
361. A search? Oh, sorry.
Maybe my eyes. Is that what you're doing?
Oh. Yeah. Okay. So that might have been inadvertently deleted.
I think I was a proponent for getting rid of mitigation measures. because mitigation measures could be used as a way to get all sorts of variances from the setback. And then if the person doesn't maintain their mitigation feature, they could make things worse with it. So I think that's why I think I had been an earlier proponent of not opening the door to mitigation measures.
I like that.
I think that's correct now that you remind us. And it comes up somewhere in here in terms of the county can grant variance from the setbacks, which kind of smacks at the same thing.
So then should we just strike 3 in its entirety?
So we got rid of 3.
Well, if you're dealing with all your advanced wastewater treatment in the wastewater regs, then it seems like you're taking care of that.
That seemed to work.
I never cut that. Or something.
Yeah, the whole point of 3 was mitigation methods.
Right.
So,
So strike that. And then, yeah, Bern, you had a number of comments about the SSI provisions, which, yeah, I agree with your comments and questions. Just going down to the next full paragraph 7. So, yeah, Joe.
What line?
I don't,
Line 254.
yeah.
So I kind of would like to see an SSI be done for a zoning district amendment.
So,
Is there a reason?
yeah, that's kind of conceptually discongruent, incongruent with like just how we are treating zoning district amendments, and our ability to bring in land use plans under a zoning district amendment. Because that's the whole thing, is you're not approving or considering a certain development. SSIs are specific to development. You're just considering a change in the zoning designation, and the whole host of possibilities that accompany that.
So I guess I'm thinking to that specific parcel that is the triangular piece of land off of Roger Canyon Road, that there was a zoning, an application to change the zoning from ag to residential. And we knew that the boundary of the APOZ cut somewhere through that triangle, but didn't know where. And it was being asked to make it rural residential. So, I mean, you could estimate how many houses someone would be trying to put on that parcel and whether that is appropriate.
So, right, but then under that zoning district amendment, if you want an SSI and you're treating it as a development, that takes away your ability to use the comp plan or any local land use plan under 9A301. So, and you're going to catch them on the back end with the zoning certificate or conditional use permit.
And in that case specifically, then the 35 acre minimum lot size
Right now,
lays in on top of that.
it didn't back then.
It didn't.
Right. Okay, I guess.
And the 35 is not something we're contemplating here. That's in current regulations.
Right.
So we want to change it, we can. But that if they came through the door tomorrow, the APOZ portion of that triangle would be subject to that federal law says.
Okay. Uncle.
Right.
Sorry.
All right, I'm satisfied with those suggestions, so we're getting rid of item 3.
Yeah.
And then my next comment was down on Romanet font 6 at line 306 in mine. Which talks about drainages, creeks, other bodies of water.
Oh. Yeah.
Okay, this was just a small thing, kind of editorial. In Stantec's recommendations, they made the point that drainage is, quote, as established in the field, unquote. I would bring those forward from the CAP. Just there is a tendency to think if it isn't a mapped drainage on a USGS quad of certain scale, then it doesn't count. In fact, what we mean is something more conceptual. Go out and look and see what you see. Are you following me, Mr. Clerk? I'm at the end of Romanet 6.
It's line 310.
Line 3.
Mr. Chair, can we back up slightly, to Romanet, 4?
We got that one. Looking over it. You guys?
Yeah.
So backing up to 4.
Yeah.
When subsurface wastewater, yes.
Yeah, so this is another thing of, I mean, a lot of this SSI deals with the small wastewater facilities, so what of that should be in the SSI and what should be in small wastewater? And, you know, given there was also the change up at the very top of the APOZ, well, not very top, right before the table of prohibited land uses, that all development except small wastewater facilities permitted by the planning department shall meet the requirements of the subsection. So yeah, I don't know why you would it be?
Okay, is it perhaps is redundant, is it objectionable? It just strikes me that the SSI is to outline what's going on with this piece. It doesn't assert design authority over the septic system.
Well, this is saying
It simply asks them to tell us.
that the facility will comply with all of it. So yeah, that's basically getting into like designs.
It's just having them tell us that it does comply. We're being reassured here. It isn't that we are establishing standards here. Can I make that distinction?
Suppose. I mean, yeah, well, and it could always be redundant. That's not
And I don't think
unlawful redundancy in and of itself.
I think it's helpful because I
Okay.
think it's also like a placeholder or like
A call out.
I'm a developer and I'm like, oh, I gotta make sure that I meet this standard over here. So it sort of brings attention to it.
But then I guess with like a subdivision permit, well, so actually with 35 acres, there would never be a subdivision permit because you wouldn't be meeting a subdivision. I just thought of.
Right, but no.
Unless it's more than 10 lots.
Yeah.
Let's remember the mapping that we had at our last meeting. There are a lot of lots out there that are less than 35.
Already.
Yes.
So as we look forward, those are the ones that are most likely to see development. So
Well, yeah, but I'm saying that we would, but they could never get a subdivision permit because subdivision is into less than 35 acre lots.
no, but the SSIs are not strictly related to subdivisions.
No, they're not. That was
My recommendation is we leave Romanet 4 in.
okay.
Fine to me.
That's fine.
All right, I'm
Okay.
down to
The 6.
yeah, number 9. It caught my attention as I was going back and looking at Stantec. They had a 10th item in their enumeration of what goes in an SSI about listing all the possible contaminants? Was there a reason that you guys left that out, or was that just an oversight?
What's that? Oh, so of potential contaminants and amounts stored, generated, or handled on subject property. That is getting
It was item
a
10 in
little
there.
beyond my understanding of zoning authority.
What line are you looking at?
Okay, well, this would be Romanet 9, but I'm comparing that to the cap where they had one more item.
What line on it?
Oh, what line? 334. 334 on my.
$330.
Okay, thank you.
Does this Romanet, I love just saying Romanet now that we know that's what those are.
Don't we love that term?
Romanet 9. Does that sort of capture the telling of the contaminants, waste storage? Doesn't that kind of
Well, here-
encapsulate it a little bit?
Here's what's in the cap. Again, for what it's worth, their separate item was, to the extent not prohibited by city and county prohibited activities tables, a list will be provided of potential contaminants and amounts stored, generated, or handled on the subject property. And again, my question was, when you guys were making the comparison between the cap and the regs, was there a reason to leave that out?
Is that all?
Yeah, I don't
household?
recall.
Does that capture then like just regular household quantities of like Mr. Clean's?
I guess, yeah, sorry.
No, I'm done.
Okay, so
So
maybe
what's
you're.
the point, I guess, of it? I guess, why do we want that there? I guess, like, looking at this from a kind of my global view is what an SSI should be doing is, one, identifying where the vulnerable features are. And then two, making sure development is set back from those vulnerable features, which is pretty simple, right? So all this other stuff that we are asking for, is it necessary? I mean, why do we want to have hazardous materials? Why do we need to know that people are going to store a couple gallons of paint on their property or whatever this is?
Well, then how is that enforced and what effect does that have? They could be, they could say, oh, none, and they bring a bunch up there.
I mean, when we were going through this, I think our thought was like, let's just get rid of the stuff we don't think is necessary to do what we're trying to make this do.
I mean, I understand the point of it. That's not really even regulating land use.
But this is not regulation. This is a request for information. I mean, I think.
Yeah.
But, right, to my way of thinking, much of the SSI is, let's get our arms around what this proposal entails. That can go beyond what we have specific authority to regulate. It seems to me that's valuable as public information, how the public wants to respond or not.
I mean, I think there was a comment made that like, we're making people do a report just so we have information when it really is not necessary for the development. I mean, that was made previously. I mean, is that what this is doing? And I'm not saying it is either. Like,
That's a fair point.
I mean, I don't know.
And I think that,
I'm just saying it's not a discussion. I don't care what we do here.
what is this, what effect does this have on like what's actually going to happen? Yeah. Because pretty sure my garage would violate the table of prohibited land uses.
All right, no, I'm satisfied, but you'll hear me over the course of the evening refer back to the cap, and this is a general statement.
Yeah.
We had those guys brought in as clear the deck, tell us all about the cap. And we have, well, in the case of the boundary, we've explicitly looked at what they were recommending, and we've modified that to suit us as we have a right to do. But I would like us to build on that and do that in an explicit way. So, all right, I'm happy to not have number 10 included as per this discussion.
David, as planning director, and the person on the ground is gonna have to deal with all this. I mean, you have to care one way or another and tell us what you want.
I mean, I care. I mean,
Yeah,
the
I'm
big-
sure you do, but
the big things for
don't
me
say
are,
you don't care.
this is what I said is like, where are the vulnerable features? Let's make sure they're set back.
Right. That's good.
You know, I mean, the other stuff to gather information, if it, you know, ties into what we're trying to do and it will be helpful in the future. I mean, you know, as long as we're not going crazy about
No,
what we're
but
asking.
what you're saying
you know.
now is exactly what we need to hear from you. You're saying, yeah, that doesn't, yeah, it's not gonna help you do your job.
Sure.
And I think a large part of this
And
is
you do care.
it's helping to like gather or add to, you know, the larger body of like geologic data of the aquifer. Which makes sense.
I mean, and I would say for the most part, the SSIs that we've had, they're not super onerous, you know, I mean, they do cost some money, but, you know, I don't think we're like overstepping our bounds. But at the same time, it's like, if there's information that we just don't need, isn't gonna be helpful, then let's not.
So can I ask a ignorant question?
Please.
For the SSI, what are we expecting? I mean, the geologist comes in and maps all these structure and whatever with what methods? Do we have a standard for the methods? To me, that will be more valuable than, you know, any other information about it. So, for example, if somebody comes and just like, oh, I think there is a feature here, or I have used ground penetrating radar and I know this is exactly the feature, this is exactly what it looks like, and this is exactly how deep it is. And if we're talking about gathering information about the aquifer and its structure, might as well set those standards rather than any other.
I mean, the answer is we do not have such standards, and I would argue that's out of our reach. What we have done is required that a qualified professional appear on the site and examine it for these features. And then we have an opportunity for a peer review of that, and they're invited to use whatever techniques are available. That, in contrast to dragging down a 1 to 50,000 scale map from the internet and saying that's the answer. So the point of the SSIs is a focused look at these items of interest for that site.
But what you're
There are
telling
no criteria for that beyond just read the cap. We're looking for faults. We're looking for the fracture zones associated with faults. But to put numerical sidebars on that, I think is not within reach.
What you're telling me is that a professional can go to the internet and download whatever map they want and then assign a name to it, and you have no idea of knowing how they got the information.
Well, they're subject to peer review. That's your safety net. There is that somebody independent looks at it and says, "I'm right. That's a $2 item. And you could have looked a little further." So yeah, that's where the peer review comes in. And you will not hear me be a great cheerleader for registration. Means these people come down as little demigods, but we are putting some faith in folks' credentials and education and willingness to put their staff in some things. But it's trust and verify. Find myself quoting Ronald Reagan here.
I think you're applying your standards to everybody else in the field, so, which I think if I were in charge, I would have set minimum criteria for standards, minimum standards of what you need to do in order to map these features. That's what I would do. But that's because I'm a scientist. Right?
Yeah, it's the same as the practice of law or any sort of self-policing profession.
Standards for how a search engine operates.
We aren't here now. If there are such standards can be developed moving forward, we can modify these. But as I say, they're completely beyond us at this stage. Unless somebody wants to contradict that, that would be great. Are you proposing we hold off on further regulations until we?
No,
have
I'm just telling you what my personal preference would be.
So where are we? I'm down at exemptions. 4.
Yeah, well, so we're good with the peer review aspect.
That's our,
No, just, I mean, the text of it.
the text.
I don't think you had anything there.
I didn't have any problems with that.
Okay.
So then we come to exemptions. The CAP recommended no exemptions for what it's worth. As I read these exemptions, and I have discussed this with Mr. Gertz a little bit, I don't find any support for them. Zoning, for example, as we've gone through multiple times in this commission, comes from tax status in 1996 or something.
Close, yes.
So there was no shred of exposure to any environmental issues or anything else. So I just don't see no reason to exempt things because they happen to have gotten zoned a certain way under a completely different set of criteria. Other thoughts?
But you can't go back and say, you already have this built, or you already have this zone, and now I'm going to litigate on it. If I understand what you're saying.
Well, this would be, the exemption would be if you come forward with a new project that you have to get a zoning certificate for it. You wouldn't need to have a SSI, you'd have to jump through the hoops. But the whole APOZ is an overlay that was laid on top of existing zoning. So the idea that we zoned everybody in 1997 and those rules can never change, I think we've moved well beyond that in a whole variety of ways. What we're saying here is that if you come forward with a new project, a new development, you have to.
So let's say somebody has 10 acres on the APOZ and they want to divide them in two.
They can't do that.
They cannot.
No, but that's current law. That's not what we're contemplating here. That would fall under the prohibition against smaller than 35 acre subdivisions. So there was a time when we could have done that, but that time passed a year ago or so. So the question here is, do you want to carry some of those statuses? And the first exemption being offered would be if it was zoned in a certain way back when. And the second one is if it was in a subdivision as of August 7, 2012, do we exempt it? And my suggestion there was if we're going to be doing exemptions, it would be if you're in a subdivision for which an SSI has been produced, then you have met that criteria. And you
Why was August 7th, 2012 picked? Was there a trigger for that?
Yeah,
but
yeah, Mr. Chair, that was when, I believe, that was when we approved the update to the aquifer protection overlay zone after we approved the cap in 2011. So this was when that was implemented and these exemptions were put in at that time.
So sort of
And
like
so-
grandfathering it.
Yeah, and this is just following that. We've kept this in there following what occurred in 2012.
Essentially, a lot of these just prevent a taking.
but zoning itself is a taking by some people's notions.
Well, yeah, by some people's notions, but no, I mean, under case law, the effect is that you look at is like the difference between when you bought the property versus when a change went into effect. So if you buy a property in the APOZ, after all this regulation is in place, you don't have any standing to bring a zoning because your property was always subject to it. Nothing was removed from your bundle of sticks that is your property rights. That's the Supreme Court's language.
Okay, they're the sticks people.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you see that? I guess I'm not seeing where that's relevant to these exceptions.
It was relevant at one point. I mean, so yeah, I guess if you have a non-conforming lot, well, wait, let me see.
There are many non-conforming lot sizes,
Yes.
and no one's suggesting that that's an issue.
If someone wants to start building on them, they need to bring a new SSI.
they need to play by the current rules. I mean, that's just, I say, that seems to me inherent in zoning. We didn't have any zoning prior to 1996, and a person bought a 40-acre lot, wanted to put a nuclear waste repository on. Well, their dream was snatched away from them by the heavy-handed law.
No. Oh yeah, because these are just SSI exemptions. Sorry, I think my
I think the
frame was a little off. My comment.
the proposal is that we
Yeah.
not exempt folks for zoning. And that we not exempt them for being in a subdivision unless that subdivision has gone through this cycle. Now, we can discuss that for the vote on it, or do we want to proceed with that as our next iteration? Understanding?
I'm so confused. This is all referring to buildings and structures.
Exemptions, SSI shall not be required for the following.
It's buildings or structures, I mean, so if I got a zoning certificate prior to 2012 and I haven't built my building, then it expired, right?
But for example, if they went to put an addition on a building, what Berta's saying is that they should have to do an SSI. This is saying that they don't.
So, Mr. Chair, may I clarify? So are you saying no exemptions for any type of development then, like an addition or an accessory building?
No, I think item 3 deserves our attention.
1 and 2.
1 and 2 are the ones that
And 4.
I'm seeing no reason for.
Oh, okay.
So
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Or no,
Okay,
oh,
so
4
you're
was
okay
that.
with accessory buildings and additions? Okay.
Yes.
It was the other two. Sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, we can strike those.
Now, again, I was going to modify my objection to item 1 and 2 a bit to say if you were in a subdivision for which an SSI had been prepared, there are 2 of those, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
Then that's fair.
Yeah.
Mr. Gertz, does that sound right?
Sorry.
Okay, my suggestion was that we retain exemption number 2 if you are in a subdivision for which an SSI has been prepared and approved,
Instead of, okay.
instead of just any subdivision. And as I was offering, my recollection is there are 2 of those, Rocky Ridge and Stony Point, or whatever they are. Pile of rocks, more rocks.
2012?
Yeah, there are 20.
Those were not before 2012 though.
But you could
Well,
change
they had
the
a sub-
verbiage to say all subdivisions that have
Yeah, any building or structure in a subdivision for which
SSI has been approved.
an SSI was provided as part of an approved subdivision permit.
Yeah. My language was for which an SSI has been prepared and approved, and then you would strike the language about 2012. Is that clear?
clear.
Has been provided and approved was yours?
My words were has been prepared and approved. I guess you could just say approved, whatever you guys think.
Or just provided as part of an approved subdivision permit?
That would work.
So what that's going to mean is any lots that have not been built on would now have to do a SSI unless they are in a subdivision that has a SSI already completed on it.
Correct.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Acceptable. Move forward. All right.
And get rid of 1 in its entirety?
1 is gone entirely. Okay, then I'm down at exception number 3, and I mean, that's a very interesting one, and I'm quite sympathetic to, you don't need to have an SSI to paint your fence. And in fairness, the city has required SSIs on some quite minor projects, like putting new siding on a big building. So I'm sympathetic to us finding a way to not require an SSI for minor structures. So Mr. Gertz, could you kind of walk us through what we're thinking of there? What counts, what doesn't count? What would be left if we exempt any accessory building structures, et cetera?
So, so obviously additions, I mean, anybody adding on to a building of any size, and they could add any size, right? accessory buildings or structures of basically any size. So it could be a little, a shed, 12 by 20 shed or what size they are, or a large bull barn or something like that. Yeah, I mean, that's what you would allow if this was left out as crudely written. So pretty much anything that's not a house.
But they would still have to prove that not the required setback.
Oh,
It'd have
absolutely,
to
yes.
meet
They
all the
still have to meet the
other
zoning requirements. Yeah.
Right.
Just. Well,
I guess when you say it, it causes me some pause. And we heard this from the woman from the bakery out by the airport. She said, in order to maintain her qualification as a home business, she add a little bit on the bedroom so she could keep her ratios down. That struck me as kind of a dodge. And I wouldn't want that to be available here, that I've got a little one-bedroom house and I turn it into a palace. Say, it's just an expansion of my one-bedroom house. Is there some way that we can?
well, you would still have to meet all the vulnerable feature setbacks for the palace.
Yeah, okay. And where would that step take place? Let's follow that thought. So I want to turn my one-bedroom house into a palace. I have to come for a zoning certificate.
Correct.
And where does that zoning certificate get exposed to local features, say,
So,
in the absence of an SSI?
It's a setback requirement.
I mean, it
Standing
would
alone.
basically, be a setback requirement from whatever local features.
But nobody's identified any local features.
That's true. Then they just have to get setbacks from the boundary lines. I don't know.
You would have to. I mean, they would have to give like some sort of proof that it's not within 100 feet of a vulnerable feature.
What the exceptions.
No, but
So
the
I'm saying,
exemptions
okay,
for
so
the
is that
SSI,
because it's,
there's still the setback
because we
requirement.
define it as development, or it says development has to be set back.
Yep.
And not wastewater systems. Okay, so yeah, I guess we would look at that.
Yeah.
Is this the way that it's written now? We would need to look at that.
And then, and them just saying none wouldn't.
But you
Right.
would just do that with your own staff and forces. I mean, that kind of defeats. the
That's
point.
what it would be, yeah. I mean, it would be, I don't know, that'd be kind of difficult, like,
I mean, is there any ABOZ property that doesn't have vulnerable features?
Yeah,
the problem is too, is like, now we're getting into, okay, maybe some of these homes are closer than 100 feet that have been up there for,
Oh, then
30
they're
years.
they're non-conforming at that point.
yeah, but that would negate them being able to do an add-on.
Because
right?
then,
So-
then if they expand, it's no longer non-conforming.
Yeah, because it's expansion, right? So, okay. Yeah, so,
okay, I would
I
like,
mean, we are not doing this now, so I can't tell you what we're doing, right? Because like, these regulations aren't in place, but.
okay, I would like us to try to narrow that exemption to, I think what we're all thinking about, which is putting a deck on or building a corral, but not building a huge house. Which if you started from scratch, you would be required to go through the zoning system.
It says,
And maybe that's what, some size restrictions or number of buildings.
we'll have that conversation.
Words to offer here, but are we sympathetic to trying to not have folks take a seed and grow it into an oak tree?
It's interesting.
I'm sorry, was there a question?
Well, I guess I'm inviting you to offer us some language that would parse this third exemption based on the degree of development. I don't have words to offer.
Okay,
Think that through for us.
yeah, I'll think back there.
Because
Yeah, because yeah,
by all means, speak up here, but a tool shed should not require me to jump through a bunch of hoops.
Yeah.
But turning a one-bedroom house into a home business to do such and such, adding 50 to 100,000 square feet should.
Fortunately, we don't have any good definitions that we can lean on for.
In the next item 4, the way it's written, it says an exemption to the full SSI requirements. So I thought the word full either to be stricken or explained.
Yeah, I think that you would just say, for the development of single-family residences on 35-acre lots, considering limited risk presented to the Casper Aquifer, only a site plan showing the proposed development on a recent USGS topo map and setbacks from vulnerable features is required. So,
Okay, so you're gonna get rid of the word full and just not refer to this as a full SSI. You would just define what it is you want.
yeah,
I
Do
think
we have
that's,
anything but a full SSI?
no.
that sounds acceptable to me.
Yeah.
It's just, if you're gonna say full, then I have to know what.
What does full mean?
And then, and I gotta turn to you, Mr. Ayers, considering the limited, that phrase struck me as out of place.
Yeah, I don't like language like that in regulations.
I don't either. Let's
Okay.
strike it.
So yeah, just comma, a site plan, will be required. Showing, okay.
Okay, and I just had one more, I think, which was, line 474. And it's kind of on that same topic. Why get rid of that statement about you're not off the hook? Is that out of line in regulation? You see that certainly commonly enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's,
Are you guys with me? 474, it's the one that says, by the way, you're still liable if you kill the neighbor.
What is that?
474,
My 474.
item 14.
Oh, struck.
It was language that was eliminated from previous versions of this, which I would bet were put in by some lawyers along the lines.
well,
What does it read?
They weren't
I'm
as-
trying to find it because I don't.
Okay, it reads, existing law on aquifer contamination is unaffected. It's
Oh, okay.
sort of like what you see in contracts.
so Mr. Chair, we already have, chapter 1, section 5, relationship to other resolutions or laws. If municipal, county, state, or federal laws or regulations impose additional standards on land use, the more restrictive standard of the entity with legal jurisdiction shall apply.
So this is just unnecessary.
Yeah, I'd say we already have that.
Does it serve any purpose by way of flagging it?
Not from my experience with trying to enforce zoning that also violates DPT standards.
Okay. I bring it up as a,
Yeah,
okay, that's the end of my line by line. Anybody else? So I've got a number of things that we've assigned to our staff to complete with next markup. Like the goal of getting us out of here to public hearing isn't gonna work, but that's fine. Do it right.
and so David and Joe, you guys are gonna work on the accessory buildings and structures.
If I forward the whole UIC table of uses, what we can do with 35 acre minimum lot size in terms of buildings and what we're allowing, what the highly SSI is going to work. We're going to look to see about, was there something in the cap about mitigation that we might have missed? Maybe we resolved that and the answer was we're not doing mitigation.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's strike that. And then we're going to work on the exceptions to try to get a little tighter bundle around the structures. Okay, thank you.
So I'm sorry, I have one more thing.
Please.
Because I thought it was something that got changed in a previous version, but then this version, it isn't. So either I'm remembering wrong. If you go to line 229, it's the whole section about getting a variance from setback. The setback may be lessened. I thought we had talked about moving the idea out of number 1, that no other location exists on the property that can meet the required setback standard, as being the threshold that would trigger your ability to seek a variance from the setback.
Right.
So I thought we had talked about moving that concept up.
I think we did at 228. Isn't that at 228? Just at the beginning of that paragraph.
No development shall be approved within the APOZ until the applicant demonstrates to the county. Oh, yeah, okay, you did that, sorry.
I think that was in response to the discussion you remember.
Okay, then I did remember right. I'm just not reading with good comprehension. Okay,
Okay, are you
that took care of that.
Are you happy about that?
Yes.
Okay, all right, very good. Now, since we are gonna make another round on this, I had an idea that you could respond to, Mr. Gertz, and that was, I did a word search on the cap for recommend. Should, just so I could remind myself of what they told us we should do. At one point, if you'll recall, they had given us a red line of our regulations back in a few iterations. And we declined to include that as an appendix in the final cap, but it was an assignment that we got, that our contractor was supposed to do, and I believe they did in some measure. So my thought here is that could you go back for the record and remind us of where they had recommended something, whether we did that or not? And I'm not suggesting that because they recommended it, we have to, but I just think that would be an orderly thing to remind ourselves the value that we got from our cap and what parts of it we are accepting and what parts of it we are modifying. So, is that an attractive point?
So, Mr. Chair, so I guess my only concern would be is I would want to, I mean, I'll do it from the cap, but I don't want to go back to another document that wasn't adopted in the cap.
Understood.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I believe our starting basis for this version that we just are considering, Mr. Gertz had gone through and plugged in, from that appendix, what was being recommended.
Yeah, and that's in our understanding. I'm just making that explicit. And as we've discovered over the course of this, some of us keyed in on specific words that we remember from the cap that you guys glossed because they didn't strike you as important, and we brought those back forward. So anyway, I just think that would be a good cleanup exercise to make the comparison between what was recommended to us and what we did. If that's workable, did we agree? Okay, that's all I had on that item. Yeah, in fact, they had a table, 6.7, recommended management strategies. It's kind of an easy one to tick through and say, okay, yeah, we're doing that, we're not doing that. Wastewater regulation. Yeah. What do you want to tell us where we are on that? It is seeded quite a large discussion. As I alluded to under the disclosures, Ms. Erickson and I, and some participation from Commissioner Hanning and a number of folks at DEQ are trying to get our arms around what does enhanced mean? Is it doable? Is it possible? Our cap, you assured us that it was, and brought forward some examples from Idaho and Montana that we were assured at that level that meeting standards like the 25 milligrams per liter was technologically possible, and they even produced some numbers that were not intimidating. As these guys have worked on turning into wastewater regs for Albany County, there are a few stumbling blocks that have appeared. So what's your impression of where are we on that? Mr.
Okay.
Where are we going?
So, I mean, to start from our last meeting, we did this, did I come on last meeting? Whenever it was that we talked
20th.
about them last.
A million years ago.
Last meeting was a marathon meeting. I guess that was the meeting we had then, so yeah. So we made, or I went through and made kind of the basic changes that were fine, that were proposed by Lisa. And then there was the one paragraph that's basically where the hang up is now and where all the work is being done is, and it has to do with requiring the advanced treatment systems. So Lisa has been, and Vern knows, really digging in to try to gather as much information as she can about these systems, who's using them, how they're using them. She's looking at studies that have been done with these systems. And she's at the moment still gathering more information. She'll be going to a conference, DEQ training conference. I don't know.
They're calling it a on-site wastewater
Workshop. Yeah. Whatever it's called, but
for septic systems.
she'll be going there, asking more questions to DEQ. She's already asked questions to DEQ. And she's been talking to somebody in Oregon lately, that went through a huge study. I think it was like 200 systems that they monitored and looked at, and kind of picking these individuals' brains or whatever. But where we're at and where we're hoping to go, she's hoping to synthesize all this information, put it into a report, and she's going to give you her recommendation at the next meeting. And then we can kind of, or you guys can discuss it and see what you like, what you don't like. And then we can then put something into that paragraph about the advanced treatment systems. And there's quite a few questions about the advanced treatment systems. Right now, I think that Lisa's trying to work through, and right now she's not super impressed with them, any of them. But yeah, so the county's going. Yeah, there's also whether we can even permit them at all. There's a question about that because of what is in our delegation agreement currently, which gives us the opportunity to, I think it's simple. Is that the word?
So the
Simple
definition of
systems or-
small wastewater system, which as I could have.
And I'm not sure if that means right now, if that might be what the case is, but there may be an opportunity for us to go back and change that wastewater agreement. But usually when you do that, you update your regulations, which is a project that is starting to begin or whatever. And you do that all at the same time, and then DEQ will look it over, and then we'll get the delegation agreement signed. And if it would be up to them at that time, if we put something in there that allows us to regulate these things, then we could. But right now, there's a question of whether we can. So,
But what we are doing, as I understand it, is we are approving enhanced systems.
yeah. And honestly, they're the ones that DEQ is requiring of subdividers.
Right.
So,
So one option would be for Albany County to say, the law says those who go to DEQ, we just do
go to
these.
DEQ, yeah.
We could take that route and there'd be some gnashing of teeth at DEQ. I don't know that I'm recommending that, but I think that's why those guys need to be in this discussion.
Right, absolutely. And those are questions that we're going to ask. So,
And it's, so good for her.
so that's where we're at. That's all I know. So,
So, but the pieces of that puzzle that we have kind of locked in on again, when everything's up for grabs until we sign the bottom, is we are trying to develop wastewater regs that require a higher level of domestic effluent treatment for new systems on the EPOZ. And at our previous meeting, we agreed we would like to look at extending that to replacement systems on small lots. So we're still comfortable with that piece. And now it's a question of what does that enhance additional whatever mean? Is that fair?
Fair, yes. I mean, there was some discussion I had with Lisa about the smaller lots too, but I think we'll just wait for what her opinion is once she gets her report done before I say anything about that, because I don't know exactly.
But the
what
sense of
she's
the
thinking
commission
about
was
these
that
things.
we did want to reach it.
Yeah, 2 acres or less.
And then again, remind us of our role in this is advisory. I mean, this is not something we have to approve. We don't do wastewater regulations, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
So this is in front of us, not as something we're going to certify to the Board of County Commissioners, but just as a sounding board for the staff developing wastewater regs. Because we have now tentatively agreed to take septic systems out of zone. Big step. We're all still there?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, that'll make Mr. Ayers happy. All right, let me share one thought that this is an email that Ms. Erickson exchanged with her counterpart in Oregon, where this $5.5 million demonstration project was done. And he writes, Deschutes County, this is the county of Oregon, said they wished they had more options for nitrate control and cautioned that the best solution is to keep development off the aquifer. I think that's wise. That's what we've tried to do with our regs. So,
Which, our regulations do that with further development with the 35 acre minimum, that really is probably the best way to protect.
the definition of the APOZ, getting the boundary right, 35 acre minimum lot size, daily good uses. That's the guts of aquifer protection. And we're trying to now put the polish on that and make it into a tractable, enforceable set regs going forward.
That's a good summary.
That's okay. We all agree with that. All right, I'm done. Anything else on wastewater regs? Then you can tell us about the growth plan. Mr. Hirsch.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. So, the memo I included, I wrote a long time ago. So, I'm probably just going to give you more of an update and where we're headed. And then, whatever thoughts you guys have, obviously. So we are working with the city of Laramie to develop an intergovernmental agreement. Currently, we've had a couple of iterations, I think, that we've went through with the city of Laramie, and we'll be meeting with them here in a couple of weeks to go over that. What I think it's important for us to understand what the intergovernmental agreement is going to do, right? Or what some of the things are that they're going to address. So the one thing it will address is it's going to determine the boundary. It'll determine the Laramie growth area boundary. We will adopt that boundary. So as part of this IGA, which will also need to be adopted as zoning too when we get to that point. Another thing is it will currently as we're kind of doing these iterations, there's a requirement. Or it will establish a requirement for water sewer connection when it's contiguous to the city or when annexation is possible through the statutory allowances or whatever it takes to do that. So what we would require is that water sewer connection be provided as one of the things that the county gives. So what this means is somebody comes into our office, they're contiguous to the city, they're eligible for annexation, and we hopefully would have our overlay zone. But I guess this will be independent of the overlay zone. But so they would come in and we would just say, if you want to develop that property, wonderful. You need to make sure you have a connection to municipal water and sewer, and then we will allow you to do that. We'll go through that. So essentially what that does is then they'll probably talk to the city and go through the process to either do their development and access in the city, or they won't do their development. It's kind of how that would play out. The other areas that this will look at is right-of-way standards and road standards, so that when we have development, they don't come in and we require them to do something that if the city comes out and annexes this in an area, then it causes them problems. So we would have joint standards for both right of way as well as road building or the building of the roads and the infrastructure and those types of things. That being said, we still have to follow state standards, so we would have to make sure that those standards meet what the state says, because we are dictated to by the state. We're an arm of the state. We do what they say. So we're developing those, and then let's see. Also, another section that is being discussed too is the extension of water and sewer into the county without annexation, making that a possibility. Something like that would probably include an annexation agreement or something, but I mean, that would be what the city would take care of. We would just say, hey, you want to do this on this property, you can't, you're not going to annex or whatever, but we would be happy to allow you to do that if you annex it. The city would allow for the extension of water sewer services. Right now, they do not. If you're not contiguous to the city, they will not allow that. This would be a change of their policy if they allow us to do that. So this is kind of a way to this is something that county residents or property owners that want to develop would have, kind of a tool that they could use without necessarily annexing, but also developing to the standards that we want them to develop to in the growth area. So that's what we're working on. It's still all sorts of red and different colors and all that stuff. But I mean, I guess at this point, is there any questions about what we're doing with the IGA or anything?
All establish a timeline for getting done.
2025? I don't know. No, I'm not really sure. Right now, I mean, I guess it depends. It's I think we're working towards getting it done. I would say that it's possible to get it done this year.
So you're saying you'll have a set end date?
There's no date, no. It's just, we're looking at things, they're looking at things. We'll probably need to get our county engineer involved, as well as the attorney's office when we get a little bit farther down the road. So, I mean, it's going to be a bit of a process. I guess the good thing is it has to go to the Board of County Commissioners, do 45 days, but there's no other required reviews or anything for that.
So it won't come through us, or can it come through us as a courtesy?
It doesn't have to come through you, but I don't have a problem bringing it through this.
If we were to establish an overlay zone, that would come through us.
The overlay zone would, yes, but the intergovernmental agreement is a separate document and it's separate statutes and things. Actually, I'm not sure. Does it go out for? I don't know how that's mad if that even goes out for review or whatever. It's a contract, yeah. But intergovernmental agreements, do they have to go out for public review, or is that just done? City signs, county signs. So I guess, yeah. So I guess it could be quicker without having that part of it.
It won't mean much without the zoning behind it.
No, absolutely not. I mean, that's the biggest piece, I think, is the zoning, and that's, yeah. Anything else on this, I guess?
Questions on his memo?
I just have a quick question about the IGA. Well, I guess a comment and a question. I'm glad to hear that the city is considering extension of sewer water without annexation and having that be an option. I guess just wanting to be mindful about, what we talked about earlier with the how many dwellings per parcel concept of whether you're using a septic system or going on to centralized sewer. My concern, and I think it was a concern that came up when we were adopting this, was if the city annexes more land that's in the APOZ and then allowing that to be made into, small lot subdivisions that come onto sewer, I'd still be concerned about the overall increased harm. So is that something that can be managed through the IGA to say, I don't know, if you're gonna annex this, it still has to stay 35 acres?
So, I mean, they did do the plan, and the plan does have what the future land use is, so that binds the city to, you know, kind of that density, which I would have to look to see what that is.
It stayed the same.
Is it stay the same as what it is? So really, it shouldn't change. But absolutely, I think there could be something we could address. I don't know, put something in here.
Well, and then it would still have to go through whatever the city standards are. Which, are you familiar with those?
Well, they don't have, I mean, we all share the same Casper Aquifer Protection Plan now. So they would still like share the prohibited uses, but they would let you totally load up a parcel with a bunch of houses. And then,
Yeah, they do lots more, I mean, much denser housing on the APOZ than we ever did.
and all you can do then is what you condition the approval to be, right? So like when I sat on the city planning and board of adjustment, we sort of had to approve a subdivision. I mean, there were no grounds to deny it. And all we could do was condition it that, like, your landscaping can't use herbicides, pesticides, and you can't have basements because that was gonna further decrease the cover over the aquifer. But that was pretty much all we could come up with, and so it's not that they don't have, like, they're gonna be motivated by making an increase in their tax base by allowing it to be subdivided as small as they can.
So, I mean, is that something that wants to come from this? I mean, is that something you guys would agree with? Because I could definitely recommend or put that in the IGA that, you know, any development in the aquifer protection overlay zone should be 35 acres or more, regardless of whether it's annexed to the city or not. You know, I mean, I'd be happy to put something in there. I don't know what they would say, or.
Yeah, I'm fully behind that, especially since that if there is any other development on aquifer that is outside of the growth plan, and we enforce the 35, that it becomes a discriminatory practice, because you are treating people who are on the aquifer like a city. You can develop any parcel as much as you want. And if you're just on the other side of the boundary of the growth area, no, you can't. So I think that would be a problem legally. So I mean,
Obviously the difference between the development is septic systems, not septic systems, but.
The question I had is one that I had in my notes here earlier, but it's appropriate here. Supposedly the city and the county are both moving forward from the cap to develop appropriate regulations. So what is the status of that coordination? Are we sharing any of the thinking we've been doing on our zoning resolution with city? And are we privy to whatever the city's doing? Because we thought we're not going to have identical regulations, but that we were going to coordinate that was going to speak to the issues that we're raising here. But where are we with the city on coordinating APOZ regs?
As far as I know, that they haven't began looking at the regulation portion yet. I know that they're focusing right now on the IGA stuff. I mean, I could ask them. I'm not sure if, I guess I don't know that for sure, but it was my impression that they were doing the IGA and then they would do the regulations after that. Now, that being said, it's like on the county side, when we went through this process with the consultant, they did provide us an overlay regulation that we could use and we could adopt. Obviously, it'll need to be tweaked or whatever, but I've just begun looking at that again and bringing that up. And what it would look like basically is we would take that growth area map and fit it to the parcels that are out there, and then adopt regulations according to that. And what would happen is if somebody came in and wanted to develop in that area, they would then, the overlay would kick in and they would have to follow the standards there. If they develop as in, if they wanted to subdivide or if they wanted to do a zone change, then those standards would apply. Now, it wouldn't apply if somebody came in and was like, well, I've got this parcel, I want to build a house on it. It's like, okay, we still honor we would use the base zoning instead of the overlay zoning. So, and we have a document, and the city's seen that document. So basically the city knows what we're thinking at this point, because that was something we worked on together with the consultant. We just haven't got it into a format where I can bring it to you guys and say, hey, this is something to start looking at.
The question is on the APOZ regs rather than on the growth plan. We don't get kind of outside this agenda item, but what are you sharing with planning staff? What we're doing with APOZ regs in terms of our SSIs and our requiring. The point is that the city has a considerable interest in what we do, apart from the growth plan, with the Casper protection plan.
Sure.
So I would like to know that they're aware that we're talking about, say, not requiring upgraded septic systems on lots bigger than 2 acres. Is that something that they care about, as they should, because the water is headed into their wells? So I guess I'm just laying the seed. We should be sharing that with them to the extent they're interested. Are we doing that, or can we do that?
I mean, we can. I mean, it'd be nice to give them a document that's like kind of cleaned up. And, you know, right now it's just a kind of a mess of a document. I don't know, like, I mean, if there's ideas that you want me to pitch to them or take to them, I'm happy to do that. But I don't know. For me, I wouldn't want to see like every iteration of something from them. I just want to say, okay, what have you guys came up with? And then I'll point out what I like or dislike. But I'm willing to do whatever you guys want me to do.
That's the process. I'm just trying to ensure that happens at some level that's appropriate.
Well, and all
the
these
city isn't just, okay, they can see it when it's out for 30-day public review. I think the
Yeah.
city has some special status in here that I'd like to promote and preserve. And maybe that's our next iteration or something. I just want to keep that on our radar, that we want the city to be responding to how we are protecting their aquifer.
Sure.
Well, maybe we just try to make sure they'll see when it goes out to public comment.
I mean,
They could provide us with the spirit of, hey, we'll do what you guys are doing. I guess really all they can do is set back.
We don't have to, but then that cuts both ways. And it goes to your point. We would like to see them put some aquifer regulations together that are congruent with ours, so that we don't have this big discontinuity. That Laramie subdivision.
Yeah.
And in that case, the city didn't do what we were just talking about a moment ago and say, let's maximize the number of houses on that. They in fact pushed back pretty firmly the city planning commission. And the thing is kind of.
There's a sensitive feature on that too. Back to what Cora was saying, it's not just sewage. It's number of vehicles, it's, oil, it's
fertilizer.
fertilizer,
Sure.
so if we say 35 acres because of all these things, it doesn't matter if you're connected to city sewer. And that becomes discriminatory if we're doing it on this side of the line and that side of the line. So I think we should push them to, at least on that.
I don't have any problems with this.
And that's somewhat separate from the growth plan. These are.
I'll just say I disagree with that. I think that once land gets annexed to the city's gonna have prerogative to do what as it will, and it's obviously in the city's interest to, protect the same resources we care about, and I think in general they're going to. I'll also say improving ethanol. If you look where existing development is, and especially where there's dense development outside the city limits, interior of that, there are places that probably make a great deal of sense to develop rather than go further out where there's sparse development. And there will be in a better position to make those decisions, I think.
Yeah, but putting in, 500 square feet lots on the aquifer is not going to be very good. So if we can't force them to do anything, but we can convey to them, look at how much work we've done on this, make sure you don't toss our work away.
Well, I mean,
Consider it.
we kind of can persuade them to do what we want to if we put it in this agreement and it says that, so, I mean, if they decide they don't want to do that, then the agreement basically goes away.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
we could, I think that the APOZ draft or like regulation draft is in place where it could be put out for public comment now and a public hearing scheduled. Because, those follow-up items that we have, none of that would be substantive change for planning and zoning purposes. If you wanted to get that from the city or.
Well, all right, let's follow that thought. I guess we all can defer to you on what's substantive. Let's say we were to change the exceptions dramatically. Would that count as something that the public would say, I wish you'd given me a chance to talk about it?
So
For example.
the difference is, okay, so when it's not a matter of going from planning and zoning to the board, that's where you run into bigger issues because of the statutory language. But under normal judicial principles of substantive change, there it's more focused on subject matter, where it's like, is this within the scope of what was noticed? Like, could this have been considered? And I would say anything, yes.
Okay, so we put it out for the 30 days, comes back to us, and we take those comments and change it in many ways within those topics. That's fair game.
Yeah, like one prime example was from, it's the chocolate milk case where it was the FDA rulemaking. They were saying what would be considered for, WIC, and I think maybe food stamps. They gave notice on, something completely different. And then after the end of their public comment period, went ahead and said chocolate milk won't, or won't be eligible for WIC. And so that's the difference, is like, that wasn't even within the realm of possibilities of what was being.
Considered still okay.
All right, so
here.
that would be
I think that's
within the authorization of the law. What's your advice? Are
We
we,
have no problem.
I think it's close.
This is the law. Sure.
what do you think, Mr. Gertz?
I mean,
I mean, there's a political question here. Mr. Ayers has addressed the legal one.
how we are.
I mean, I would like to take some time to finish the stuff that I've been assigned to do before and send it out.
Okay.
But I mean,
What say my colleagues here?
Sorry.
We were talking about.
Okay, well, the possibility has been raised that we would take our current work on the APOZ regs and put them out for 30-day public review and schedule a hearing. Mr. Harris has assured us that we would not be in violation of the law, but Mr. Gertz has said, let's just kind of knock off a few more of these rough edges before we do that. Thoughts?
I'm happy either way.
I'm flexible. I tend to go with what staff is asking to do, especially because he was bringing up some substantive, how do I actually do this questions that he wanted to go through.
That would put us to play out that schedule. I too am sympathetic with that, but we don't want to go on and on forever. And I would bet that our county commissioner would like to see this before the end of the world. So let's say we come back, what would that look like? We're gonna meet next month. If we put something out at that point, we could have a hearing in June. No, Go ahead.
So just because of like the advanced provision to the boomerang requirement, along with the scheduling, you can never do it at the next meeting. It always has to be 2 off.
Or special meeting.
You could schedule the public hearing now for June. And
Okay.
with that one mark here.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess, because we wouldn't be, if we're looking for a regular meeting, we wouldn't be able to do it next month anyways. We don't have the 30 days.
All right, what we're contemplating here is starting the clock next month. And then you're saying we couldn't have a 30-day in June, let's have a special meeting,
Yeah.
which I'm not unsympathetic to. I mean, we've worked this enough to where we could probably get smaller if you guys agree with that. That would mean we could certify it forward to the county commissioners in June.
Yeah.
Our June meeting is on the 12th.
Right, it's just that if we come up with something we want to put out on the May meeting, then the 12th is too soon. But we could have a special meeting a week later or something, which again would hurt my feelings, but don't let me speak for you guys. And that would move the thing forward to the county commission. They would have to go out to 45, and that would get the whole thing done by September.
I mean, I guess it comes down to what would you all prefer? Would you like to see some language before you make this decision that, you know, to really like, okay, this is pretty close? Or, I mean, do you want to, are you comfortable with where we're at now with those few things, and whatever language we come up with, we can tweak, I guess?
I'd like to see the language myself. I'm with Commissioner Hanning, Ms. Platt, Ms. David, if you got a thought on the urgency with which we proceed. Time does glide along.
Where me, I move for now.
Okay,
If we can get it by September, that's great.
so again,
If we can get it done by September, I think that would be great.
I guess I'm hearing a consensus is let's not schedule hearing at this meeting. But if we have to do a special meeting in June, then we can effectively get things back on track. Okay? Good discussion. Anything else on growth? Just a procedural question while we're here, and this is kind of for Mr. Ayers. In the excerpt that we were provided from the plan, it talks about, quote, zoning sets the policies and laws governing the use, bulk, height, density, and other physical or operational characteristics at a specific site. Now, if I understand it, on the county side, that's probably way too expansive a statement. Is that? I mean, what can we do? We don't have a building code in the county, correct?
No. So, sorry, I'm trying to.
It's right
catch
above
up.
the,
Okay.
oh, it's right above the two little pictures there. And it was just caught my attention is something I think you've schooled us on. Of the city can do a whole lot more in saying this is what you build, this is how your 2x4s get spaced. And we really could just talk about uses more generally.
Use structure. Yeah,
You can do all those, I think.
Dave, what's bulk?
I don't know what bulk is.
It's,
Size of the building or something, or like?
Well, height caught my attention. I
Yeah,
mean,
you can do height.
You can
You
do
can,
height.
you can totally do height.
Yeah.
all right.
Like, yeah, the Supreme Court of Wyoming has even said height is beautiful. We just don't have height.
Okay.
Teton does, like.
So we
very
can't
hard.
do size of pipes and spacing of 2x4s, but we can do heights. and
Like
widths.
just general height of building. Actually, like your hometown, the LDS temple.
Go, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, Sue and I are from Powell.
Oh, you're from Powell?
We
I thought you were from
distinguish that.
I thought you were from Cody. I'm sorry.
And don't say that.
That's right, we got nothing to do with it. All right, well, thank you for that clarification. So we really do have a really broad authority, short of just details of wiring and plumbing.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm gonna say like physical or operational characteristics, and that's getting like, if you're getting into what kind of siding you can and can't have.
All right.
Joe looked up bulk too. It's like floor area ratio, so it's like the amount of the building and I think square footage compared to the lot that it's on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what bulk is.
I'm not anxious to do that, but I'm just.
Yeah, I didn't know.
How broad our license is. All right,
You can even regulate, like square, like floor space.
I know some people do
Zoning.
like the sun, like so you can't have like a 2-story house and then
Change your
another.
number.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of things you can do in zoning. Honestly, you can regulate a lot of stuff in zoning. Apparently not wastewater. Other than
Okay. All right, any other thoughts on that? I have no more. If not,
On the growth area plan.
what's that?
On the growth area plan.
I'll go here.
Yeah, I have a topic I'd like to raise.
Oh, on growth area plan.
Yes.
Please.
This overlaps, so it includes growth area plan, but also just zoning in general. And I sent a note to David yesterday, acknowledging it very late, but I believe we should move ahead on thinking about and adopting some additional zoning districts. And I think it would move us to act sooner rather than later. And partially because this is a layer with their plan, thinking about the subdivision, we were looking at state residential for their plan. So there are designations for zoning districts to come, presumably in the growth area plan, which we could go ahead and begin shaping and adopting. And some of these things are useful anyway. And one thing that's come up now at several meetings is applications for zoning district change to commercial, and what a broad swath of things that includes. I believe that should be cut into several different categories so that more finally allows and restricts what can actually be done on a property. And I just sent some examples to David, but I wanted his thoughts. And now I want to put that in your ears also. Again, I think we ought to get in front of this rather than have to react to it. Or react to it to some degree.
Good points, Mr. Hirsch.
So, I mean, yeah, we're actually looking at some of our zoning information. Joe's been working on that, looking at land use table, zoning districts, those types of things. I guess that's where kind of what was laid out here in my memo is we have options. We don't have to adopt an overlay zone. The overlay zone is just what was worked on, and we have that, and it keeps the base zones. However, the other option is to just go ahead and create new zones based on the Laramie Growth Area Plan and adopt that map. And you don't have an overlay. It's just these are now the zones, and these are the requirements for the zones and the standards for development and roads and all those things on those. So either way, I mean, that's if this body decided they didn't want to do the overlay zone, we could do what you're talking about. Or I'm not sure if you wanted to do the overlay zone and then also adopt other zones in this area.
Well, I mean, this relates to the Laramie Growth Area Plan, but I'm thinking about the entire county now.
Oh, sure.
For everything coming in, we could use some more zoning districts.
Well, absolutely. And that's one of the things Joe has been working on because, yeah, your example, I mean, I think you brought up the multifamily, the commercial. I mean, it's kind of like our commercial zone is really the catch-all. Like you could do all sorts of stuff in that. You can have single family with a conditional use, and you don't need a conditional use to put in an apartment complex, or you can put in, like a grocery store or a restaurant, but it does all of that. But we really should have separate zones that kind of address those types of issues. And what Joe's been working on does address some of those things. So yeah, if that's what you're looking at, I think Joe's going to cover that, and then we can still work with the overlay zone for the growth area itself.
Well, but with the overlay zone, even though it's within an overlay, you functionally have to spell out exactly what the standards for that.
Yeah, where it
The
was.
zones within those overlay zones are. So why don't you just adopt them as zoning districts? Since
You
you've
could.
already done, you would already have to do all this, the same typing.
No, you're absolutely right. Like there in the overlay zone, there's a land use table.
Yeah.
There is each zoning district has a description of what it's going to be, just like what we have in our regular zoning. So it's basically you're doing all that work and it becomes an overlay zone, or you could, and you really could put it in there all together, and it's just, do it for the whole county, I guess. Use those same zones other places if you want.
I'm completely sympathetic to it. It's a good point. We kind of circling around that Centennial coastal line, well outside their Laramie area growth boundaries, but something that.
And perhaps Joe could
use
tell
some-
us why.
They have water and sewer there, you know, which
Yeah. Okay, so could we
Joe,
get,
where are you?
can we get an update on that?
So I have, first off, defined pretty much everything you could ever think of. Updated the land use table to include a bunch of stuff. And then I have, wrote up new zoning districts, and applied those in the land use table as well. And I've worked on those for, I was probably November to February, early March maybe. And they are now in Dave's hands so that he can look over it, we can discuss and move forward how we see fit. There could be tweaks. I know that in my proposal, I have come up with at least two, what I would call, I guess, residential zones, and then two additional commercial zones, light, medium, and heavy. So that's kind of where I see it going, just so that we don't have this, you know, if people want to apply for commercial zoning, then we don't have to fit everything in to this one and have to worry about it. I mean, that's my take on it.
Yeah. I think that's been a theme of many of our discussions.
So I'd say it's a lot closer than we need to start on this, but still obviously has a ways to go.
So, I think we all concur, yes?
Yeah.
It's a great thing to move forward and huge overlap with growth plan, whether that comes to fruition or not. So it's not wasted effort. Good. Is there anything else on growth plan? All right, let's get a report from our temporary USAC representative.
So, the way the meeting is structured is that first you start off talking about the urban system fund allotment, which is the money that certain urban areas around Wyoming get from YDOT every year to put towards specified road projects. And so the Bill Nye extension has been on the top of the list probably for years and years and years. And they're getting closer, I think, to actually having enough money to do the project. Then on the priority list after that, is that where Bluebird Lane is? Is that the next?
they're number two, yeah.
Number two is Bluebird Lane, which you guys are probably all aware of Bluebird Lane.
That's Tumbleweed is on Bluebird Lane, right?
Right. And I think that's seen increased pressure of traffic, not because of Tumbleweed, but because of the high school. That's like the shortcut to leave the high school and get to the interstate and get to West Laramie that way, or other parts of Laramie. And so it's on the priority list. And I was going to say something at the meeting in disagreeing with that being on the priority list, mostly because I don't think the people that live on Bluebird Lane would like that to happen. I mean, if I lived on that street, I wouldn't want to have it turn into a major thoroughfare just because the high school happened to land there. And I'm sure that road would take neat widening and people would lose their landscaping. And I think there's other ways to solve that problem of how the traffic leaves. And it just got me thinking about, I mean, one of the reason I didn't say anything was, I conferred with David and Joe before going into the meeting about like, I'm not for this project, but then they talked me into just like, they made a compelling case for not rocking the boat. But in thinking about it afterward, I just keep thinking, aren't there bigger problems we could solve with money out in the county, and I don't know if this would be okay or not, but I mean, having the county be responsible for putting in a road out at, what is it, the paddocks? What's our subdivision out 287 that only has the one ingress egress? Or pull off lanes on 230 or 287 to make it safer for people to pull into subdivisions, because YDOT isn't triggering the need for that, but the community people are saying, we want this. And so I just wondered, is there leeway to think about other projects beyond Cleveland Wing that are more meaningful, like in a all positive way for county residents? Because I just think there's other ways to solve the Bluebird Lane problem. And I don't think if you ask anybody who lived on that road whether they would want that project, but turn lanes, additional county roads in places where there's only one ingress egress, people would get behind that. And I don't know if that's possible to do, but I just thought I'd bring it up for conversation.
We'll put somewhere on that list for a long, long time has been 30th Street.
What?
30th Street, taking
Yeah.
it south, clear into an intersection with 80, which would,
That's still there, but
that's still there.
I think one of the problems is that the county has never received any of this money. I mean, so the city keeps having the priority projects that gobble up the money, and the county isn't getting the money. And which is why I think
30th Street was a city project. Is it all still on the list?
it's third on the
Is that what
list.
you were?
And isn't like third basically just completely hypothetical?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's way out there. So I don't know. I just thought about, like, I am sympathetic to the county can't seem to leverage money out of this pot of money. But are there more life-saving projects that we could be asking the money to be put to besides Bluebird Lake?
Sure. I mean, Mr. Chair, I guess I would say, in order to request the money, it has to be on the major street plan. So the roads on major street plan that are either shown as collectors or arterials, that's where the money can be requested for. So that's kind of your starting map. This is where you start. Any of the roads that are, county or not state or federal roads, like the highways and stuff like that, we can't do anything about turnouts or those types of things. One of the roads that's on there would be, what is the road? Skyline Road. Skyline Road goes all the way across from one side. That's where that whole side, I guess it's subdivisions at Valley View and those over there, all of that, Markle's development that's over there. They have one access to come across that bridge. And so, I mean, that's a road that could definitely be considered with this money. So yeah, I mean, if,
Connecting it to the service road that goes to 15th Bridge,
what's that?
Skyline to skyline. So connecting.
Skyline to 15.
To 15th
So,
Street, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
15th, and then what's the other bridge?
Yes, it's Vista. It would connect.
Vista.
It would connect Vista with
Yeah,
Skyline.
so it connects from
Connecting
there
them, yeah.
all the way to, one side or the other. So there's that or whatever. But if that's something, I mean, if you guys see something on there that you would like to request to be as a priority, you could put something together. I could get that on the next USAC meeting, and then they would discuss it like, hey, we want this as a priority or whatever. I mean, I believe Blue Board was put on there because of a request from our Road and Bridge Department. So, I mean,
From whom?
the Road and Bridge Department. Yeah, the problem with this money is it's not a lot, and it takes like a decade or more to get a project, especially this last one. It's a pretty big project. That Bill Nye project is huge, and it's yeah, we're at millions of dollars and not even, I mean, I think they have enough according to like 2000 whatever money to do it, but you know, you could probably add a couple million to what it is now, but they're working on it. When did they say that was their
2026.
2026? They think that they'll build that out. They'll get that project done around there. So I guess it's after that. But yeah, at this board, I think you guys have just as much right as anybody else to make a request. So if there's a better road, you know, somewhere else that you'd like to put on there, you know, you can definitely make that request. So
Maybe 30th is pie in the sky, but that struck me as just that just solved a whole lot of problems, and it takes the pressure of development off the eastern part of the city, which is consistent with growth area plan and our APOZ, and maybe that one's just too big and too far away, but that looks more like infilling the city rather than facilitating growth out into the hinterlands.
right.
So yeah,
I mean,
if somebody asked me where I'd rank them, I'd put that one on the top of the list.
Skyline?
30th
30th Street.
Guys, to take 30th on south
Then it would connect with
all the way to the interstate.
Well, and Bill Nye, correct? Yeah. So the other city project they're doing. So yeah.
But there's a whole tract of land there on south on 30th that's
Yeah.
it'll be a great place to build the city, and it's close in, and water and sewer.
Right. And I guess another thing to be cognizant of too is the Bluebird project, is that, I mean, honestly, it's part of the Bill Nye project. I mean, because it goes Bill Nye, Bluebird, Bill Nye on the other side of the road. So, but the Road and Bridge Department is getting special purpose tax money as well. So between the special purpose tax money and the money that they could get from USAC over a few years, they probably could get that project done. And it is an important project to the county. So I just didn't want to discount Bill Nye, or not Bill Nye, but Bluebird in any way, because I know it's been important to the county. But yeah. Oh, yeah. Like that. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, either you guys could you could send your support to move up that 30th, or, I mean, that's something you guys can do. As any community member really can do that. Developers come all the time and make requests, not all the time, but they have come in the past to make requests. Hey, can we get this, on there or whatever? And then whoever's, going to the next meeting, they can make that request at that time, like you could have, whatever, but apparently talked you down, so I apologize.
It'd be interesting to talk to Rob
Fisher?
Rob Fisher about what he sees as being important about the Bluebird Lane project.
Yeah, for sure. I think there are safety concerns along there because of obviously the new high school and the kids, everybody else using that road.
Yeah.
And so widening it a little bit, and just making it a little bit more like.
That's another area.
Yeah, we're gonna get a lot of pushback.
That's another option.
Okay, thanks.
So then, was that a temporary appointment to USAC?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
just.
Mr. Platt is our.
So if I read it next year.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe before that next
So
meeting.
far, I'm batting 0-2.
Okay, get our heads together and see if we want to nudge those priorities.
Well, and maybe having Rob Fisher come in and talk to us at some point about what he knows about what he sees as being priorities out there. Or are there roads do we have a master road plan for the county?
The only plan that we use is the major street plan.
So the major street plan is the one that the city maintains, or is it a joint?
It's a joint city county YDOT. YDOT is really, yeah, it's the USAC one.
You'd have to first ask to change something into being a collector or arterial out in the county
Yeah.
if you wanted to fix other safety problems.
Well, they have money to do things too. I mean, this is the only pot of money, But yeah, if you wanted to use that money, then it would have to be a collector arterial. It only goes out, they're only supposed to go out so far. I think there's actually a boundary, maybe it's like the urban boundary or something that they've defined or whatever. Those types of things. But I mean, honestly, like you bring up a good point. It would be nice if the county had a road improvement plan or a capital improvement plan to look at roads. And that's always been my thought is like Pope Springs, wouldn't that be just a great county road that we could take over and maintain and make sure it's nice? And then, you know, for all those folks that are already out there and people are doing subdivisions anyways. I mean, I don't know. But yeah.
Thanks for entertaining.
Yeah, no, those are good thoughts. Hell Road, of course, jumps in anybody's mind.
I don't even want to hear that one.
That's the electric line that's kind of.
Right.
Other thoughts on that? Did you have any other staff updates? I think we.
Just tell you where everything's at. We've got the fencing on the May meeting that we've already reviewed. They'll be on the board county commissioners May meeting for approval or denial or whatever public hearing. And then the first meeting in June, we will have signs. Where's access at?
Done in January.
Oh, we did it. Okay. There's too much stuff going on. We're done with that one. Never mind. So yeah. So June we'll have the signs on the board county commission.
Are you getting any public comments on either of them?
Nothing, at least to us. So.
I had just one general comment. Maybe you can help me out with. It's a change in the comp plan, and we don't want to break that out, but it's bugged me for some time that the map of priority growth area 3, somewhere along the line, it was changed to conform with the APOZ boundary south of town, but not north of town. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know why that happened, but what would it take to make it conform to the new boundary now that we have a boundary that's established? It would just kind of bring the comp plan into conformity with these other things we're talking about. And as we move forward with the growth plan, was that too tiny to be worthy of note, or can we just replace that map?
You can just replace it. If you can replace it, and it would follow the same procedure.
The comp plan amendment procedure, yeah.
Is there a reason not to do that? I mean, it isn't much, but it would just kind of bring that little map into conformity with some of these other things that we're talking about.
Well, I mean, it might be worthwhile to do the other ones on the south now that the line has moved too.
Right, I'm not sure, just make that map
Yeah.
look like the new line.
Yeah, I mean, just amend the priority growth area stuff.
Yes.
I mean, that's something we could do. That's not a problem.
I mean, if that's simple, if that's okay with you guys, let's just run that through as almost an editorial change. Let's just get that map. So agrees, and then somebody looking at the growth area, they could drag out PGA 3 and see that we're all singing from the same.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, we'll work on that and
Great. Any other comments, commissioners? It's on your mind. Next meeting is May 8th here, 5 o'clock.
Do you want to set a special meeting in advance?
I was thinking not. People are getting tight. I guess what we're talking about before would be in June, so it's kind of how there was.
Yeah,
Okay. Seeing no public, we can safely invite public comment. All right, hearing seeing none, there being no other business to bring forward, we're adjourned. Thank you, folks. Good job.
items for you, so